Okay, Ben, thank you for joining me on Headstrong.
Thank you so much for having me.
How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Really
Married man, 5 months in.
well. I know, a real whirlwind. Anyone who's got married, it's like a months and months and months in whirlwind. But then when it happens, you're like, oh, is that done now?
Well, congrats, obviously.
Thank you.
The first thing I need to ask is, were there any immediate life changes after a marriage? You know, did the dishwasher routine change?
I would say no. I mean, me and Leanne have been together for 6 years now, so I think life doesn't really change that much. But
Yeah.
it's a lovely moment in time to spend time, you know, with your friends and family and celebrate your love. And of course, being in a relationship with Leanne, it had to be as extra as possible. So
Obviously.
it was.
Leanne, a friend of the podcast, delighted to have you in as well. It was Jags in, your dog, last time, and Hamilton is in now. So we'll do our very best to let him do his thing. But yes. But as you say there, you had one that was very extra, but you also did have a little intimate wedding as well, I suppose, which was more of the officiating and then the big party, right?
Yeah, I think our approach was we wanted to share that moment with our closest, our friends and family. So we had 20 people at the legal ceremony, small ceremony in London. And then we wanted to make sure that the wedding was really the biggest party possible. I think everyone does weddings differently, and we just wanted to put on like 5-6 hours of like pure, like good energy.
I know it's a really tough question. If you were to give some wedding advice to a couple about doing something, what are you saying? Are you going big, small? Are you focusing on who to invite? Are you focusing on the visual aesthetic or the location? What's your advice?
I think for me, you've got to be truly and authentically yourself. I think the weddings I've been to, plus when we went through ours, like, don't necessarily go for traditions because you have to do traditions, right? You should do what you want to do. So what we did and what worked for us was putting on the biggest party possible was what we wanted and what went well. Because of that, I think the most important things are like the music, obviously the guest list, like you got to want to be inviting your closest, but also people who are going to be bringing a good vibe. But yeah, I think do what's most important to you and don't fall into the trap of like doing things because you feel like you need to.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. Now, what about that best man speech? I'm sure John brought some good stories.
He did. John did a great job. I think John, and for those that don't know, John's a fellow Peloton instructor. He's a larger than life character, but he did a great speech. But when he began the speech, I realized that he had sheets and sheets of paper, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like a 20-minute. But it was great. He had a good cadence between like,
that's
good. And
yeah, I think getting a balance right for that is difficult. I went to a wedding recently and it was just not what you would say in front of a grandmother, shall we say? And you know, you've got to really find
Yeah, I've had a couple of those before where you're like, either what are they saying because it's too in jokes, or totally inappropriate.
Yeah, for sure.
He did a good job.
There you go. You're getting well involved, Hamilton. So we're going to talk about not drinking in a bit. But at the wedding, I'm assuming you didn't drink.
So I didn't drink at both of my weddings. Yeah, actually, I had a drink at my
a toast
at the legal ceremony. But yeah, I mean, for drinking for both for me and Leanne since her diagnosis, we just had a totally different approach to it. You know, I've gone through periods of drinking a lot and then not drinking much, and you know, I've just had a interesting relationship with alcohol where it's never been an issue for me, I would say, but I just am at a stage in life where I want to achieve a lot and I want to grow and develop as a man and as a partner and as a friend and family member. And so for me, it wasn't really serving me. And I think that Leanne's diagnosis gave us a bit of a push to be like, let's just give this a go, see what it's like. Yeah. And we've sort of seen that we don't really need it in our lives that much, but I'm also not in the headspace of like, you should cut it out every opportunity. You know, I don't frown upon people that want to drink. And so if it feels right to have a drink, or the setting or scene feels like you want to, then go for it, right?
Was there apprehension or nervousness before the wedding about that? Because, you know, typically it's glasses are full at a wedding. It's a celebration, of course. I know that you'd been sober for a significant period of time by this point, so you know it's part of your lifestyle. But was there any apprehension for that, or was it you were kind of comfortable already?
I think the mentality that I went in with was, if I fancy having a drink or a something, then I'm going to allow myself to do that.
Yeah.
But I think with where I'm at with it, it's like, I don't feel pressured by other people to drink. You know, it's such a big part of our society, but I think I'm at a point where if I'm going to have a drink, I'll have a little drink. But if I don't, then I would prefer that on most occasions. But I think at an event like a wedding, I think the most important thing is for you to have that control, and you to really like just own however you want to feel or however you want to embrace that moment.
All right, you sit down. There we go. Good boy. We're going to come back and talk about the drinking in a little bit further, but I want to go from drinking to food, because the important stuff in any relationship, in any marriage, is making sure the other partner is well fed. And I know that food is a significant part of your lives, but first of all, I've got to ask, do you or Leanne ever get hangry?
Both, but I'd say Leanne's worse. Leanne gets very hangry, and it's amusing to see it unfold, because you can start to see it unravel. I would say we both love like cooking, we both love food, but I'm more of like the chef in the house.
Nice, that's what I was going to ask. So you're doing the cooking significantly. You enjoy it?
Yeah, I love it. And I think particularly since she was diagnosed, before she was diagnosed, and actually a little bit probably before that, I used to eat food to fuel, because I used to be obviously very much into my fitness and building muscle and making sure I was in a good place to be as athletic as possible. But that really flipped totally when Leanne was diagnosed with breast cancer, because it moved away from that and more into how can we support our bodies from a health perspective. And so we delved deep into understanding like what nutrients do we need to be fueling our bodies with to just make sure that she can go through her treatment, but also that mentally we're feeling good. And then I think on that journey, we got into like understanding different types of spices and different ways to flavor your food. And then you just start to enjoy it and love it, and realize that actually cooking at home, if you have the opportunity to, is such a blessing. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I love to experiment when, even if it goes wrong.
It's the best.
Yeah,
it's the
best. And actually, I don't know about you, but cooking for me, I really switch off, because I can't focus on anything else, because it's like, okay, I've got that on there. You need to chop this.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It's like a meditation. Like, I'm really bad at meditation. Like, I'm not very good at focusing on one thing at a time. Spinning a lot of plates and most of the time. And so having, whether it's half an hour to like focus on just that one thing. And of course you're still spinning lots of plates at the time while you're cooking, but it's a very rewarding process. And then serving that up to either your family or friends is also a cool thing to go through too.
Okay, so from what I hear, then you're quite the connoisseur or in the kitchen now. So if you were to do a dinner party, what would be your 3-course meal?
That's a good one. I'm a big like Italian sort of dish person. So I think my taste is a mix between great Italian dishes, Asian, and some Mexican.
It's a seriously politician's answer.
Very much. I eat it all. But I would say that my specialities lie more in like the Mediterranean and Italian sort of space. And so if you come around our house, you're probably having like really lovely bruschetta with maybe some burrata or something like that to begin. Or like, I've tried like tuna tartare at times or stuff like that. It's like really lovely. Yeah, like that type of thing is like beautiful if you can do it properly, but it takes some time. And then in terms of like a main dish, we love like, things like really nice like curries can be beautiful. However, like nothing for me beats a pure Mediterranean, like well-seasoned like fish with beautiful potatoes and like some really well-seasoned vegetables. We love traveling to, whether it's Spain or Greece. And when you just go and eat their like authentic local food, for me, that's like pure the best you can get. And it's simplicity at its best, but you got to sometimes like work with what flavors work for you. And it's also about buying good quality stuff a lot of the time. So if you go and take the time to buy a nice bit of fish or a decent piece of meat, but then flavour it in the right ways and cook it in the right ways, it's the best.
Dessert? Come on.
So I'm a big tiramisu fan.
Gosh, here we go.
Leanne's not really into cream.
Okay.
And so she loves like strawberries dipped in chocolate or like more simple desserts or a really nice brownie. Make some stellar brownies.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't had lunch. This is upsetting us.
So you see, it's not like overcomplicated food, but if you do simple food well, I went to like a cooking course recently. It was like one of the Jamie Oliver ones, and it's all about like 3 ingredient dishes.
I love it. Yeah.
And for me, that is like some of the coolest ways to cook because it shouldn't be overcomplicated. Of course, eating fancy food and complicated food is amazing, but everyone can learn how to cook simply. And when you do it well, it's really fun and it's really really rewarding.
Yeah. I mean, you used the word fuel earlier about food, and I imagine you meant that more as like, I need more calories. Whereas it sounds like your relationship with food has changed.
Big time. So I used to eat between about 4,000 and 6,000 calories a day.
Wow.
And I used to be like quite big on tracking food and trying to get my macros right. And this was very much about like, I used to compete at, in CrossFit competitions, functional fitness competitions. I think having become a Peloton instructor and being exposed to like a much wider range of athletes and people from all sort of walks of life, I think my approach to fitness and health and wellness has changed anyway. But with regards to food, I think my mentality now is a lot more like long-term versus like, I don't know, building muscle or like being fit for a competition. And it's now more related towards like longevity and making sure my body is, fit for life. And so a lot of that comes down to like making sure you're eating a real like nutrient dense diet, you're getting a good variety, you're not over eating too many calories, because actually that can put a lot of stress on your body. And I used to go through months of like just feeling so inflamed because I was working out too much. I used to work in finance and fitness at one time. And so I was working out too much, doing too much work, eating too much, and that over consumption of everything can have quite a negative impact on your body. Whereas now I try and find a better balance. And so,
yeah, there's a word that we're going to come to because we'll talk about your relationship with work and exercise. And I think with food, it's clearly striking as well that it plays a significant part with your well-being as well. Because if you eat crap, it's not going to do you good. Like I've got eczema and I know that if I eat junk food, it comes out in my skin. Like it shows. Sure. So it's exactly the same with your exercise. If you're eating crap food when you need to train well or even just go to the gym, it's not going to help you.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot more ways to track your health now. And so I think, I wear an Oura ring. And I've worn all the different devices over the years, and you can even see it a little bit on how it impacts your sleep and how it impacts your recovery. Alcohol is a big thing for that. As soon as you drink alcohol,
it's actually quite scary. On the Oura ring, for those who don't know, is a health tracking piece of equipment that you wear on your finger, and it tracks everything. But the sleep one is particularly scary after alcohol.
Yeah, and it could be literally one drink, and I don't think that should put anyone off drinking alcohol, but it's just an awareness tool, right? And food does the same. If I eat too much sugar too late at night, it will impact my sleep. And I think that over time definitely will impact your, performance, whether it's in the gym or at work or with your family. And so having these awareness tools has given me a bit more of a bit more different approach to how I approach fueling and alcohol and lots of different things.
Right. We've talked about food. Now, what I want to talk about is your lovely wife, because when she came in, we really went into detail with her experiences over the last few years. And what really came out was how much of a pillar of strength you have been for her, notably throughout the time that you've known her. But these last few years, you've really been that pillar of strength. But let's go back to that time, if you're happy to talk about it.
For sure.
Of when Leanne first came to you, or you were lying in bed, I think, and she found that first lump. What was your immediate reaction? Because I know that you have your own experiences with cancer. And so it's scary stuff.
Yeah, I think for me it was one. It was immediate. Immediate reaction was, let's just see what the doctors say, because she found a lump straight away, and in my head I was like, I didn't jump to the worst, just because of the way she is as a person. She's, you know, very sensitive of like what's going on with her body. She's very aware of her body because she's been a professional dancer all her life. And so I thought, you know, a lump is a sign of breast cancer, but however, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's definitely going to be breast cancer. So as a reassuring partner, I was like, let's not jump to conclusions here. Let's go and see a specialist. And through my own journey with cancer, like, you know that Googling something is probably the worst thing you can be doing. What you need to do is actually go and see a specialist and get checked up and get the necessary checks to get diagnosed. And so my initial reaction was like, this is not going to be like cancer. She's just going to, you know, hopefully go and see someone. They're going to tell her it's a hormonal cyst, and then we'll just, you know, work through that. And so I was worried, but I was like, we'll be fine.
Let's see what the medical professionals say.
Yeah, and of course, I think you probably went into it during her conversation, but we were going through a lot of stress at the time anyway, for various reasons. So it was almost like another thing that was happening on top of a lot of trauma that we'd been through at the time. So my mentality was like, let's go to the doctor, let's get whatever is, you know, told to us, and then we can address it. But of course, it's terrifying to think that the person you love potentially could be maybe not with you for however long, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I know we talked about it before, but we weren't recording. Are you quite control the controllables, rational, pragmatic kind of approach to things, or, you know, can things escalate?
I'm very far that way, and so I think Leanne is probably very emotional, and to her benefit, you know, that brings a lot of positives to our life, because we lean into the today and we lean into the emotions and the joy of life. Whereas I'm very much like very logical, and part of that's probably my background in finance, part of that's my sporting background. But when I'm approached with situations like this, my go-to, my default is what can we control in this moment, and what steps can we put in place to move through this as positively as we can. So yeah, I'm probably Mr. Logical.
Any journey, diagnosis, individual that experiences cancer, I mean, they require a lot of support, and it's very challenging, emotional, and indeed traumatic. But with your own experiences, when Leanne was diagnosed, did it bring up emotions for you? Because I don't know how you may have reacted to that, because you've been on the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm, you know, honest, when I went through my own diagnosis, so for those that don't know, I was diagnosed with a melanoma skin cancer back in 2018. So it was around 5 years following that Leanne was diagnosed. And what was strange for me during that period is I sort of dealt with it alone, because I was in the process of moving away from finance and moving into fitness. I think I was still in the process of almost like joining Peloton. And so as I was going through my treatment, I didn't tell anyone, because I was like, I don't want this to define me. I just want it to be like done as quickly as possible. And I wouldn't say I didn't take it seriously, but I didn't want it to be part of my identity. And so I wanted to just move through it and almost like forget about it, which in hindsight was probably a terrible way to deal with it. But, you know, I was in my 20s. I didn't want it to stop me from achieving what I wanted to achieve, and so on. And so when I actually got to the situation with Leanne, I had never processed really what I'd been through. And so you're right, like all these emotions start to come up, but I couldn't really let them out again, because I was like, right, my job here is to support her and help her through this process. And she doesn't need my, you know, trauma in this situation. So, yeah, I again dealt with it silently, but, you know, we have an amazing support network which we can lean on. And so I did speak to my parents and spoke to my friends and stuff through the process.
Yeah, I mean, you stole it out of my mouth. The next question was, you know, whilst it is your priority was to support Leanne in that time. I know that anytime that anyone gives someone immense support through something challenging, it's physically draining and emotionally draining of the person giving that support, particularly when it's close to the bone. So you confided in your parents, and was that, and your support network and friends, is that really important to you, having that support network around you for that, emotional support?
I think it's everything. I think I was very fortunate in a way because I'd been through a similar process before, and my process wasn't as extreme as Leanne's because I didn't go through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but a lot of the language that we were being told in the moment, I understood. And so what does happen when you go through a cancer diagnosis is your world gets very small, and so you need to obviously focus on the task in hand, but you need people that are going to be committed, that are going to be there for you at a drop of a hat, because you don't know which direction it's going to go. And so, within that period of time, like both of us, our circles got so small. So her mum was such a pivotal part of the process because she is incredibly logical, incredibly action orientated. So, and we just almost became this like power three to get her through every step. And then obviously our slightly wider circle were there to support us through the process. But yeah, it's incredibly important. But on the flip side, I will say I'm still dealing with a lot of that trauma now. And I'm in the middle of sort of going through therapy now just to try and understand how that's impacted me and the knock-on effect. I think sometimes in those moments, you don't always understand like how much you're holding in. And I definitely didn't. I should have gone into therapy a lot earlier. I didn't really feel ready to. But now I'm like processing a lot of that stuff that went on.
That's like you've read my questions. The question says, what is your relationship like with therapy? I mean, it's interesting how, I think what you said particularly about being in your 20s, going through that diagnosis, first of all, and not ignoring it, but suppressing it because you didn't want others to know. You're in your 20s, you don't want to feel vulnerable because you're almost like, oh, that can't happen to me.
For sure.
Everyone always has that opinion, right? Especially when it comes to something so significant like cancer. But when you look at the statistics behind that as well, I think it's 1 in 4. 1 in 4. It's pretty, astounding. But with therapy then, did you get recommended someone? How did you find a therapist?
So I actually had quite a challenging process with it, I must admit. So I tried someone, went terribly. I felt like it just wasn't the right connection. His process didn't really work with me. It was very like tough. And so then I think that put me off it for a bit. So that was at the beginning, or near enough the beginning of everything we were going through. And Leanne actually had found someone immediately that she just like got on with. And then she was putting a lot of pressure on me to she was like, you need to go and see someone, this is so important for you. And because I'd had such that bad experience, I was just like resistant to it because I was like, maybe that's what it's going to be every time. Maybe it's a me thing. But I've now found someone who's fantastic, and he's right for me because he does a good mix between listening, but then he's action orientated too. And so as a character, I need that. And so for some people, therapy like techniques, so they just want to go and talk things through and vent, and that's really helpful for them. For me, like I need steps to take following. Yeah. And so we work together to do a job of like unloading, discussing, but then okay, between now and next session, what are the steps you can be putting in place? Because for me, that's where the change happens. And I think as a fitness person, as a high performing sort of like individual, I try to be a high performing individual, that's what works best for me. But I think my advice would be, if it doesn't work first time, like keep trying, because it's invaluable, particularly if you have been through some tough times in life. And it will really benefit not just yourself, but those around you,
And don't feel like you have to fully answer this, and it's not personal, but it's more just people's experiences with therapy. When they do go, when you've had something traumatic happen to you, it is one of those things where you do have to take a couple of steps back before you go forwards. So you're kind of uncovering those untouched emotions, and they do come out, don't they? You know, it's quite, it's almost, you're revisiting the trauma to find those stepping stones, those actionable points.
Yeah, 100%. And it also takes time, you know, like I think for me, I wanted to like get into the action, like what can we do to change this before we had maybe enough sessions to get into the full details. And, you know, if anyone listens to Leanne's podcast, we went through almost back to back traumas. So within that, there's quite a lot of complexity to it. And it's funny because the first session I did with the first gentleman I was working with, I just chatted at him, and then he went, "Okay, so you got a lot to unpack." And I think because of that, I was like, he didn't hear me, or like, but actually, what probably that meant in hindsight was that we need a couple more sessions to break through some of those things. But you know, like everyone's gonna work with different people, and the gentleman I'm now working with, he's also a life coach, which I think helps because that's the stepping stone to like putting those steps in place, right? So everyone's going to work with a slightly different person. It's about understanding the different therapy techniques and maybe what's suitable for you.
Yeah, for sure.
But that takes time.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. And on that as well, in that offloading, I imagine, first of all, that was, you know, I actually want to tell somebody, right, who I think is going to actively help me. But then also it's that mindset of, they can't help me on every single thing this hour, you know,
Sure.
right? Do you know what I mean? And I know I've done that as well with my therapist, where I'll try and write a list of things I need to say, and I'll say to them at the beginning, and I'll be like, right, well, let's just do the one that you think is most important, or like, let's work through it, because otherwise, but at least I've said it. That's the thing. It was like, that's a relief.
I also think when you're in flight or fight mode, it's very difficult to then like, because if you go and do therapy, you unload, but then you're still facing a lot of the challenges you're facing. If you're someone like me and you're very like, you want to tick things off, that's not going to happen. It's like, it's a slow but sure progress to sort of, you know, becoming more aware of yourself, but also understanding like your happiness tools and the tools that you can tap into in the moments of anxiety or the moments of stress you might face.
So we've talked about support networks being kind of a pivotal thing in your life. Therapy, I'm really, really pleased, by the way, that you've like talked about that. But then what are your coping mechanisms, and how do you maintain and preserve your own mental health? What else do you do?
I mean, so obviously within, for those that don't know, I wrote a book last year that was released last year, and it was a mixture between like my journey from from a high level sportsman into the world of private equity finance, and then transitioning into being a Peloton instructor. But on top of that, it was all about raising the bar. And so raising the bar to me means lots of different things. It means building, you know, more awareness of your body, building more awareness of the toolkit that you have available to you to tap into throughout all your life. And so that's not only your health, but your relationships, your career. So in terms of my mental health, like what I talk about in the book is the pillars of wellness. So you have obviously movement, which is an incredibly important aspect of that. You've got rest and recovery. And so obviously that's relation to sleep or meditation or different way of stretching or different ways to rest and recover. You could then got nutrition, delving into sort of the food that's going to support you, and also your mental balance. And so again, that's therapy or spending time with friends and family. And so for me, whenever I'm going through a bit of a challenging mental health time, I look back on that toolkit that I have, the pillars of wellness, and say, all right, which of those is going to be most suitable for me today, and try and approach it day by day. Because sometimes I think a lot of health and wellness experts explain like all the range of things you could be doing, and it's actually quite overwhelming. But the way I like to approach it, and the way I've approached it a lot with many people I've worked with over the years, is this is your toolkit. Like if you're a contractor and you've got a toolkit of stuff, you don't need to be using every single tool at every point. But for each specific job or each specific moment, which tool can you tap into to then, use in that moment to slowly, help you in that moment or elevate your endorphins level, dopamine level, and so on.
I mean, just because he's here, we need to talk about it. How important is fresh air for you? Is that a significant part of your life? I know living in London is difficult because it's not crisp fresh air. But, for me, that's an essential part of my day. I just think anyone that's enclosed in four walls, and maybe you found that as well in the finance role.
Big time. I think anyone working at an office all day, you'll probably find that when you walk out of that space, like, it's not easy, and not everyone has the lifestyle that we have, where we do probably have more variation in our day, so we might be outside more. But I think us getting a dog was a big game changer for me and Leanne, because it forces you outside, and then slowly you're seeing like, okay, sunlight early in the morning is a really positive thing. It's making you feel good. One thing I will say about movement is it doesn't have to be high intensity exercise every day. Like going out for a 45-minute to an hour walk can have just as much benefit from a mental health perspective than doing a 45-minute high intensity workout. I think what's most important is understanding that balance and trying to find that balance between mixing up your workouts so your body isn't in total like stress the whole time. But for me, getting out into nature and like, getting down to the simple things in life is sometimes the best way to go.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love it.
Free space.
I got to say, no, I think getting the dog or a dog, you have no choice. You know what I mean? It's like, and you've got the same breed, a working Cocker Spaniel, so you're out there for a while.
Yeah, out there for a while, but it's such a joy, Like,
exactly. It's the best part of their day.
I know. I think as long as you approach it like that, regardless of how busy you are that day, it's like you see the joy that they have when they're out there, and I think that can sometimes be contagious to you.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, I love the pillars and the book. Something that I'd like to ask you as well is your experience with ice baths. So when did that become a part of your life?
And so I will say that it's not as regular as I'd like. I'm actually probably a bigger fan of saunas. And so I think hot cold therapy as a rest and recovery tool is so great. So we're very fortunate to have an ice bath in our garden. However, in the UK, having it in the garden it's a bit of a bigger energy lift to get in that than it is to get in the sauna. So we use the sauna like on a regular basis, maybe every day to maybe 4 times a week. And we find that really helps with like inflammation in the body, like great for sort of mental health, just having that time to sit in the sauna without any technical devices or technology devices. In terms of ice baths, I think it's an incredible tool to use for that rest and recovery for muscle soreness, but it's also great to use before. So sometimes if I really like feeling a little bit tired and I want to work out and get a really good session in, jumping the ice bath before, you feel like literally endorphins like running through your body, dopamine running through your body, and then you do your session, and that can be incredibly powerful. But it is challenging to be doing on a regular basis.
I'm in a tangle with my questions because we're going into everything while we're talking about it, which is great. So I'm gonna kind of have to freestyle, which is all good because it's bringing me back to kind of alcohol. But what I'm more intrigued about is maybe the goal setting that you talked about. So when you do these things, giving up alcohol, but I know that your role is in fitness, but doing workouts and things, do you set yourself these goals and targets to specifically hit them, be that daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, to do them? Or, and do you let things creep in going, actually, do you know what, today I'll let that fall, I won't do that. But then in the morning you said you would do it. So what's your relationship like with goal setting and sticking to them?
I think with regards to like fitness and wellness, I think it's important to set yourself like goals because it gives you like a direction and navigation towards it. However, I think if you get too obsessed with like being perfect, it can be detrimental. And so I think the way I actually like to approach is understanding almost like your core values and understanding like who you want to become and but the person you want to step into. Because that person, when they're approached with maybe a decision with regards to that goal, if you know that you want to be someone who is, making sure that they're being like on the money with their work, on the money with their relationships, and like they're going to be able to get up the next day and like be firing at all cylinders, then when you're faced with like, okay, should I have a drink tonight or should I have 4 drinks tonight? You're then like, okay, I am this person. I am the person who needs to get up tomorrow and I need to get my stuff done. And so I think rather than like with regards to drinking or some of those life decisions, rather than being like I think it's important to set goals, but I think that having like strict goals can actually do the opposite sometimes. It's like, I've worked with a lot of people over the years where we're trying to hit like a specific weight, or we're trying to hit a specific, like they want to go on holiday and look a certain way. Yeah. I think what typically happens, it's not everyone, but you get to that goal and then because they just restrict themselves so much, they end up falling off. And actually for me, it's about slowly building it as a lifestyle habit. And so that's why my approach towards alcohol now is like, I'm not a drinker, but if for whatever reason I'm like, I actually fancy having a drink tonight, I'm not going to like be like,
you're going to beat yourself up.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat myself up about it, because I know generally on the whole, not drinking alcohol on a regular basis is going to be beneficial for me, but having one drink isn't going to change that whole direction of my life, you know?
Yeah, for sure. What about writing a book then? Because sitting down to write a book is a daunting prospect. I know that you will have had, the editors involved and people help plan. I don't know. But what was that process like? Did you I know that publishers are very good at setting an end target, or did you write it, on your own? What was that process of writing?
So I did have a co-author, but what was interesting is that my publisher had an idea, had a concept, but then when I sat down with my co-author, we went similar, but
you got the brief.
We found different flows to it. But then actually what happened is he wrote some of it, I wrote some of it, but then I like went and changed loads of it because either it didn't sound like me or it didn't really get the message through that I really wanted. And so in terms of goal setting, what happens with that is you're given a deadline. And so you're like, they're like, we need it done by X date. And so you just have to set yourself enough time and, to be consistently writing it. But the editing process typically takes longer than you expect because I think when you're someone who wants it to be perfect, it's never going to feel like you've perfected it, because everyone might take slightly different parts of it differently. So you sometimes second guess yourself. You're like, is this going to be too technical, or is this going to be boring for some people? But you've just got to, I think, trust the process and trust yourself. And so I think my book has a good balance of that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the feedback I've got.
So do you think there's a second book in the works? Notably one with your wife?
I don't know. I think she's definitely got one in her. For me, I'd like to potentially move a bit more into like the recipe space. That's something I'm quite interested by. I think I love recipe books. I love recipe.
A recipe book is so nice when you get a new one.
Yes, unreal. I love it. And you just get so excited because then, me and Leanne have a Instagram folder where we share like all the best Instagram recipes. And so when you have those conversations, which pretty much every single couple is, what should we have for dinner tonight? You already know that you've got a roll a deck of all these different recipes you can tap into. 9 times out of 10, you put the recipe up and you just leave it open. And so then the algorithm reads that you're interacting with their page for like minutes and 30 minutes maybe. And so then that interaction feeds into the algorithms. And so like, that's why food content does so well on social, because people are like interacting with it all the time.
That's very interesting. Oh no, that's great. I think you should like definitely do that, if anything, not at least for the views. Oh no, that's great. Right, I did this on purpose because I always feel like in your podcast that you have had asked to you. People always dive into Peloton and fitness. So I've left that purposefully for later on. So, but we have to talk about it, funnily enough. How important is it in terms of defining your happiness, of making sure that you do fitness and work out?
For me, it's everything. I think it was a big learning lesson working in finance when I was working in finance, like the reality of those jobs is that you typically, it's different for every industry, but private equity, you typically get to the office at either 7, 8, 9 a.m. in the morning, and you might leave at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's on a Monday to Friday basis. And then you may even go in at the weekend. And so I went from being hugely into fitness, like played sport from the age of like 3 years old, 4 years old, being such a big part of my life, but almost taking it for granted, to then throw myself into the world of private equity. And my sole focus was to be as successful as possible in that industry. But slowly but surely, you realize you lose all of your health and wellness habits, whether that's the food you're eating, whether that's your sleep and rest and recovery, finding time to work out, the fact you're sat at desk all day, so your step count's like really low. And at the time, I didn't have awareness of those things like I do now. And so I sort of just like blindly walked into this industry, just forgetting about what makes me happy and the sort of my joys in life. And slowly but surely, I hit quite a bad burnout within a couple of years. And so what that meant is I had huge challenges in my mental health. I was sort of questioning whether I should be in the industry. I was questioning why am I not connecting with my friends and family much? And so with that, and also the fact that I then got diagnosed with skin cancer, it was a bit of a wake-up call of like, right, I think I need to make some changes. And the changes I started making were I just, rather than going out partying at the weekends and basically doing all the things you probably shouldn't do on top of working too much and, spending too much time in the office, I swapped a lot of that stuff for spending time in the gym. And that had huge benefits, not only to my health and wellness, but to my relationships. I started meeting different people from different industries, having different conversations about how are people making money in different ways, and startup businesses, and making different friends other than finance friends. And my whole mindset and my whole like happiness just totally changed. The problem with that, because I'm an A-type personality, I then started to work in the industry as a hobby. And that hobby, which consisted of doing one class a week at a gym in Kensington, turned into like 4 days a week I was working in fitness, 6 days a week I was working in finance, and got to exactly the same spot where I hit burnout again. And so,
but you're an all or nothing guy.
This is the thing, right? And I think I'm okay with that. But you've got to have awareness of when you get into that point to then maybe make a little shift.
Yeah, that word comes back in of balance, and it's so difficult when you do love something, but when it becomes detrimental to your well-being and indeed health, you've got to address it and find that balance.
Yeah, or just make a little shift, like part of me doing that was because I was falling in love with the industry of health and wellness. And it was me going on a discovery of like, how far can I take this? And I was almost doing the due diligence to figure out if I can make the jump. Because for a long period of time, I was working in the fitness industry, being like, how do these people do this? And like, can you do this as a full-time job? And like, what does your day-to-day look like? But because I was never really spending my whole day there, I'd like do maybe 2 classes before work, 6 and 7, run to the office, start my day at like 8:30, and then do a whole day in finance. I was never really getting a full taste of it. So I was trying my best to talk to people, figure out what their career path looked like, figure out, how they're making money in that industry, what their plans were. And so it took about 2.5 years, I'd say, to really get confidence to be like, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And then as I started to figure that out, Peloton got in touch. And they were like, we've got this opportunity. Cody, one of the instructors in America.
Yeah, it wasn't just Peloton. It was the man himself.
Cody came to class and he, I had no idea.
By the way, this is after Piers Morgan.
Yeah, very true. My first ever class, Piers Morgan walks in the back. Probably the worst person.
The worst person.
Yeah, you probably could not pick a worse person.
Have you ever met him and told him that?
No, I haven't.
brilliant.
I don't think I've done anything too controversial enough to be
on GB News.
to be on GB News. But yes, I think those 2.5 years allowed me to just like figure it out, and then Peloton got in touch, and then my dad at the time, he's also works in finance, and he was like really not very confident about me making this move because he's worked at the same company for 40 years. He saw a very clear career path for me working in that industry. But I think because I was diagnosed with cancer, he was at the mindset of like, I just want you to be happy. And so then even that was almost like life just being like, give this a go, see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and you can always go back.
Exactly. I think maybe it does take something like as extreme as that to happen, but scratch the itch, turn the leaf over, and ultimately you were, well educated enough and, had a role in finance for long enough that you could have gone back to that if it was a total fiasco and disaster.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have to explain yourself in an interview, but other than that.
Hey, to be fair, in an interview, everyone loves a good story.
For sure.
I think it's a part of the personality. You go, you know what, I gave this a go. Do you know what? And well, anyway, you didn't need to worry about that because it
worked out. It worked out.
Just on that corporate side of things then, because we try and do a lot of work in the corporate space as well, because I don't think mental health is talked about enough in that corporate space. I know that this was, some years ago now for you, but what was mental health like in the corporate world at the time?
It's just not discussed at all. I mean, I can only speak for the business I worked for, but I think particularly within like private equity, the expectation is you go home when the work's done. It's not like, okay, these are our working hours. If you're feeling stressed, then take some time. It's like, we've got a project to do. The client needs it for this time or this date. If particularly as a junior, you get hammered because the hierarchy is very much a case of like the guys at the top are doing a lot of the deal making. And then as you get more junior, you're doing a lot of the prep work, you're doing a lot of the, the real like hands on the ground or feet on the ground stuff. And there isn't really, that a lot of businesses have plans in place.
Yeah, they have a policy.
They provide you a lot of like perks, but then there's actually not the time to do it often. And I think a lot of it also comes down, I mean, I do a lot of speaking engagements for corporate wellness events and stuff. And a lot of it comes down to the management. And so if the management aren't showcasing that it's important, then I think their team don't always feel comfortable to be maybe taking a lunch break and going to the gym or going before work and so I think a lot of it comes down to like the culture as well. And I think it is evolving, but I think that we've still got a long way to go to really highlight the importance of that in high performance, because if you want a team that's thriving and you want a team that's really happy and also like loves working at the team, at the business that you have, you need to be also understanding what is impacting them beyond their day-to-day work,
What do you think companies in that space can do then to help make a better workplace culture, notably with well-being at the forefront?
I think the key is not trying to put everyone in the same box. And so what typically happens is that they offer one package of like, okay, so you can sign up to this gym, or we've got this partnership with this gym. I think everyone's health and wellness practices are going to be different. And so for me, it's offering like a spectrum, a range of different services. So I believe having a mental health service as a benefit is hugely important. Like someone doesn't necessarily need to be going to therapy every single week, but when they are going through a tough time, having an ability to tap into a mental health service is key. I think that creating cultural benefits is great. So like, I wouldn't say gamifying things, but making competitions or making fitness and wellness fun and celebrating those who are doing it, because I think that then instills confidence in the people that are doing it, but also maybe will get people who aren't doing it like involved. And so like creating those moments throughout the year that it can be team bonding experiences, but also understanding that not everyone's going to be 100% into running a marathon, and so again, offering different types of wellness is key, and also offering different flexibility in that option. So I think Peloton do a great job, but we have this service where if you complete a number of workouts within the month, you get an amount of money that you can then spend on a range of different wellness products or services. And so that might be like a new pair of trainers, it might be some supplements, or it might be sleep, something to help you sleep. And so with that, you're not saying to someone like, you need to be going to the gym every day, but you might be like, okay, so how can you improve your wellness? Maybe that's improving your sleep. Okay, so if you complete this many workouts, or if you hit number of steps on your watch, we're going to give you £200 or £80 a month or something, and you can put that towards your wellness practices.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's a smart way.
What do Peloton and community mean to you?
For me, it's everything. Like, for my job is essentially to facilitate people's health and wellness, like happiness, right? I think what we do at Peloton do well is we're not prescriptive. We offer a platform where you can be truly and authentically yourself, but also a place to feel a part of, or a community to feel a part of. And you can tap into it, and you can be fully in, you can not be in at all, you can, do totally on your own, or you can be involved in all the different communities and groups that happen. But community for me is like totally changed the way I look at the world. I think the beauty of my job at Peloton is that I meet such a range of different people, and everyone's got different stories to tell with regards to their health and wellness journey, but also in life. And I think what it's done for me is it's made me understand health and wellness at a much deeper level, and understand that, like, we have members who are in their 90s, but we also have members that are joining in their late teens, and those athletes need totally different things, and that's great, And so we try and do a good job of offering a big enough range of people so they can feel part of the community, regardless of which piece of content they're doing. But also, like, that's what life's all about, right? Human connection is so important. And I think when you dial down what happiness is to most people, it's human connection. Like, of course, that you want to do well in your career, you want to be super successful, you want to make loads of money, or whatever makes people happy, or what people think might be happy. But when it comes down to it, when you're on your deathbed, what's most important to you is probably like your family, like who you have been as a person, like what your morals, what you stood for. I mean, that's what, for me anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. And so, like, I think being a part of a community that share those values and share maybe the similar lifestyle habits is so powerful.
Something that's incredibly important as well from the Peloton community as an entity is the instructors. And that's obviously what engages so many people around the world, but something that we don't necessarily see. So how important is that for you, having all those kind of incredible people?
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, a lot of the individuals are from different backgrounds, they've got different expertise. And I think that's so valuable for me as a person, because you're constantly exposed to people from different cultures who play different music, who are into different things. But I think what's really cool about it is that we as a collective are incredibly collaborative. So throughout the year, we're obviously connecting on not just within the Peloton world, but we do a lot of stuff outside too. Like when we go over to the States, we're making sure we're connecting and meeting each other and doing things with each other. And I've learned and grown so much as a person being a part of that team, because every single individual on the team has been brought in for a slightly different reason.
Yeah.
And they all have a slightly different perspective on the world, on how we approach things. And I think that's invaluable to share a space with such talented people.
I said to Leanne, I would also ask her this question because she said it was very difficult. What 3 words would you use to describe Peloton?
That is very hard. I think community is definitely a big one. I think joy, like we lean very much on like creating an entertainment element of fitness, like, you know, the progress side of fitness and then becoming your best self is a big part of it, but I think it needs to be fun at the end of the day. So that's why we lean on music. That's why we lean on, you know, bringing in lots of cool people into the space and making it as fun as possible. So I think community, joy, and I would say, this is not really a word, but like human power.
I love it. Yeah.
Because like, and that's not just from a down to the progress element of stuff, but like the way it makes you feel is really powerful. So
I would be a fool to not ask you about the first time that you met Cody. The man who asked you to come join the Peloton,
yes,
you know, community, launch it in the UK, no less. What was it like meeting Cody for the first time?
So the process worked is that Cody messaged both me and Leanne on social media, and Peloton at the time was not really a thing in the UK. So this random guy messaging you on social media telling you that he wants to come to your class, or he's going to come to your class and he wants to talk to you. But I can't remember if I saw the message or not. Leanne didn't see the message, but I totally forgot. I went out the night before, got to my class early, and this like flamboyant, quite like big, as in tall, gay guy is in the front, very different to my normal crowd. I was thinking, who's this guy? Anyway, I taught a normal class, like said goodbye, gave everyone high fives, and then he sort of came to me and said, "Hey, I'm Cody," and I was like, "Nice to meet you, mate." And he was like, "Do you fancy going for a great class? Loved it. Do you fancy going for a coffee?" And I was like, "Is he trying to hit on me? Or like, what's going on here?" So I sort of said, "I can't speak here because this is my like work, but like let's go down the road and have coffee." And so very quickly, he said to me like, "I want to have a conversation with you. I think I've got something that's going to change your life." And both me and Leanne's reactions to that was like, who does this guy think he is? But what he meant is like, he's got an opportunity that he really thinks, you know, would change, if we decided to take it, would change the direction of what, you know, where we're going. And at the time, I literally said to him, like, I don't know if you know, but I actually have a full-time job in finance. Like, this is a bit of a hobby of mine. Like, I'm interested by it, but it's probably not going to be doable because, you know, my priority right now is this job in finance. And he wasn't having any of it. He was like, well, come to America, audition, give it a go, and, you know, if we like you and it all goes well, then you can become a Peloton instructor and it's going to be amazing. And so I went away and just thought, we'll see how this goes. And then it just started to snowball a little bit. And the process is long, like it's 6 months long. Like you audition 2 or 3 times, you fly out again 3 or 4 times, interview. But the whole way along, I just thought it was a bit of fun, really. I didn't really know. I wanted it to happen, but because it wasn't really a big thing in the UK at the time, I was still a little bit unsure whether it was the right thing. But yeah, meeting Cody was great.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Hey, Ben, I really enjoyed having you on. My last question is, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
I think it's understanding yourself. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, that's why, you know, a space like therapy is really important. That self-awareness is key in being headstrong, but then also having the time, the space, the energy to be doing that due diligence on what makes you happy. Goal setting is important, but it shouldn't be at the detriment of, you know, your happiness, and taking every day as it comes is important too. So having visions, having goals is key to being headstrong, but also understanding to celebrate the joys of everyday moments too.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming in, dude. Thank you. I'm sort of well done. There we go.
Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect.